Hi, welcome to another episode of the Captain's Table. My name is Jeff Pelton. I'm a veterinarian in Santa Barbara, California, and with me I have Dr. Jennifer Conrad, who is an international animal welfare veterinarian. She started her veterinary career after graduating from UC Davis School of Veterinary Medicine in 1994. That's correct, Dr. Conrad?
Yes.
Okay. And since then, she has been a staunch advocate for animal welfare on multiple continents, working with multiple animals, probably too many for me to list here. She is the founder and director of the Paw Project, which is the subject that we will be talking about today, which is trying to increase awareness, education, and try to pass legislation outlawing the declawing of cats, which has its roots in her international work, and we'll get into that. Most recently, Dr. Conrad was the recipient of the 2022 Veterinary Heroes for Feline Medicine, sponsored by Zoetis. And we welcome Dr. Conrad to the Captain's Table. Welcome, Dr. Conrad.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pelton. I'm very happy to be here.
So, as I mentioned, you are the founder and director of the Paw Project, and we are going to be focused today on the declawing of cats. And so let's kind of start from the beginning with some questions. Like in this case, how did declawing cats become a procedure that people did? If you want to give us a little bit of history on that, and also maybe wrap into it, I think that ties into your history with your international work and the work you've done on big cats. So if you want to kind of start there and get us going, and we'll see what we can do.
Okay, that's a great start. In 1952, a veterinarian who was Canadian but worked in Chicago decided that this procedure by amputating a cat's toe bones was the greatest way to keep a cat inside the house. His name was Meisner, and he took the surgery on a sort of a dog and pony show around the country and showed people while knocking cats out on pentobarbital, he would amputate their toes. And he would say that they felt no pain, that they were fine within 96 hours after the procedure. And for some reason, this took off in the United States and Canada. When he took it to England, nobody wanted to do it. And they thought it was sadistic, and they thought that he was out of his mind for thinking that this was something that you could do to your beloved animal. And so it did not take off anywhere else in the world. But in the United States, he marketed it as supersizing a spay or neuter, a way to add more income onto a surgery and to protect your couches. But he had no follow-up. And believe it or not, the entire start of declawing was from a letter to the editor in the Journal of the AVMA. I personally find that very irresponsible that the AVMA would publish a letter to the editor saying that this guy's doing this mutilating surgery and this is how you do it. And they did. And then they let him speak at their conferences, but he had no peer-reviewed articles, nothing like this. So this is how it started, with a letter to the editor in a 1952 Journal of the AVMA.
Wow. Okay. So this is actually going further back than I realized.
Yes. So before 1952, this was not a procedure that anyone recognized. Now, there is some indication that there is a chance that dog fighters were declawing cats as a way to protect their dogs when they were using bait cats,
Okay.
to get the dogs all riled up. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, or apocryphal, but that is something that I've heard multiple times.
Okay. And so based on that, with your personal experiences, like what what happened? Like, what have you seen? Like, what have your experiences been when you went overseas or when you started getting into this work? According to the articles that I read, you followed up behind a lot of these cats after they had these procedures done. Is that correct?
Yes. So here's what's interesting is when declawing started, there were no follow-ups, nothing whatsoever. There's nothing in the literature. In fact, for a surgery that is done on 20 to 24% of American cats, now think about how high a number that is.
Wow, that is high.
That's how many cats are declawed still in this country. And for a surgery that is done on that many cats, there are not many articles about it. And I believe that's because if you were to ask the right questions and look into declawing in the right way, there's no way that we would allow it. Now, let me just ask you this. As a veterinarian, can you imagine that we do a surgery on 20 to 24% of American cats that has 50% known complications immediately and 20% long-term, lifelong complications? I mean, can you imagine any other surgery that we would do that is non-therapeutic, that has that high of a complication rate, and yet we still do it?
No, I can. No, I cannot
I'm
imagine
telling
that.
you, that's why I think it's striking to me that my colleagues, veterinarians, are fighting to keep this surgery legal. Now, what they'll say when they want to keep it legal is, oh, it's so rare, we never do it, we talk everybody out of it. But yet 20 to 24% of American cats are declawed. So how rare is that? That's not rare.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
and then
that is a much a higher percentage than I would have ever guessed at all.
and then let me just tell you this. That's numbers on the coasts. In the Midwest, the numbers go way higher, up to 48%, 50%. I've even seen 80%. So this is happening all the time. Despite everything that we do to educate people, what happens is that a cat, someone who has cats, will come into their veterinarian and say, hey, I read this stuff about how bad declawing is. And then the veterinarian unscrupulously will say, well, that's not the way I declaw. I don't declaw by amputating from the last joint of the cat's paw. That's not how I do it. I just take the nail. And anybody who knows the anatomy knows that that's impossible. You can't just take the nail. If you
Correct.
try to just take the nail will grow because see, the claw grows from the bone. Unlike our fingers where the nails grow from skin, a cat claw grows from within the bone, the last bone in the cat's toe bones, of the cat's 3 toe bones. They have their toes are just like ours, 3 bones. And in order to remove that claw, you have to amputate the last bone in the cat's paw.
That is correct.
There's
So
no
in a
other way
minute,
to do it.
in a minute we'll get into the exact details of the surgery. And so a quick anatomy lesson for our listeners: whenever you look at an animal foot, what is happening is inside the toe of the animal, just like our own fingers, there are actually 3 separate bones. We call them phalanges. There's the phalange 1, 2, and 3, and the 3 is the one out on the end, and it is that last bone that is which has the claw or nail, claw of the cat, nail of the dog, that is growing from it. So at this time, Dr. Conrad, why don't you do a quick review as to what is involved in the surgery?
This surgery involves removing the last bone, all of it, or at least more than half of it, to remove the claw. So most veterinarians use what are called Resco dog nail clippers. They're a guillotine that they clip the last bone in a cat's toes to remove the claw. They're using a guillotine method. They're crushing the bone. This is totally unconscionable that veterinarians are doing this, on top of the fact that according to the Journal of the AVMA, 30% of veterinarians use no pain medication for this surgery. Now, let me just tell you this. This surgery is so predictably painful. It is used in clinical trials to test new pain medications. It's so predictably painful. That's what they choose. The FDA chooses it because they know that it's as painful as anything else. It's on the same level of pain as an ear ablation, bone cancer, amputation, like amputation of a limb. That is how highly painful it is. And yet 30% of veterinarians don't use pain medication. Why? Because they say cats don't do well on pain medication.
Right.
So they chop off their bones and then they give them no pain medication.
That's right. So, as a quick review, if some of our human listeners were looking at their own fingers, what they're talking about, Dr. Conrad is talking about, is literally removing the last bone of each of your finger. And imagine trying to then go about your day trying to use your hand without having any kind of that last bone and the things that can come with it. This is painful. Now, speaking of pain, I want to go off on a quick tangent here. You and I graduated veterinary school in the 90s, and it was during, I feel, that decade, the decade of the 90s, that pain was starting to actually become recognized. You and I were probably taught by professors who themselves had been taught animals don't feel pain. And even if they did, it's something that we could use, and that pain was of no relevance in veterinary medicine. It was that decade, I think the 90s, this is my own opinion, the decade of the 90s when you and I were in school, pain was finally started to get recognized as a significant issue in surgeries, in medical conditions such as you brought up, like bone tumors, which can be incredibly painful. And I think that, now when we then look back on some of these procedures that we are doing, some of the improvements and some of the surgical techniques and improvements in medicine are because now we fully recognize that that the animals do feel pain. And so in this procedure of amputating the last digit of the cat's toe, it is incredibly painful. These cats do feel a lot of pain, and it's horrible.
It's absolutely horrible. On top of the fact that even though it's analogous to us losing the last bone in our fingers, remember that cats walk on it,
right,
on that paw, and then they also have to dig in the litter box. And so when they come home from the surgery, which is one of the most painful routinely performed surgeries in all of veterinary medicine, they come home from that surgery, they go to dig in the litter box, and they're like, I'm never using this again. It hurts. And instead of realizing it's their paws that hurt, they think, well, it's the gravel, the sand in the litter that hurts. I'm not using it anymore. So in an attempt to save a couch by declawing the cat, what you really are doing is have the cat now pee on the couch because it's soft and it requires no digging.
Interesting.
This is what happens. And this happens in more cats than the AVMA or anyone is willing to recognize. That it's as much as like 40% of the cats who have been declawed are recognized to having litter box problems, and then even more also because they've been denied their primary way of protecting themselves, which is their claws. They now resort to biting. And so if you think that someone who was intolerant of a cat scratching a couch is going to be tolerant of a cat peeing on a couch or biting, then you're absolutely mistaken, because this is why declawed cats are in the shelters, in the pounds, at a disproportionately high amount. And this is why any rescue group that's reputable will say in their contract for adoption, you cannot declaw this cat, because they'd rather have the cat come back with its claws and be adoptable than to have a cat come back without its claws, and now it's not adoptable because it's a biter and it doesn't use the box.
That is correct, yes. So now that we've sort of established sort of the severity of the procedure and that this is painful and this is not something that is a good option, let's just then get to it. What are the reasons then people will declaw their cats? Why do they bring these cats in to be declawed?
Well, I think that a lot of the time people are absolutely undereducated as to what declawing is. Now, if we in veterinary medicine were responsible and we called it deknuckling, then maybe people would be like, oh, what? What's that? But by calling it declawing and having veterinarians who make money do it say that the way that they do it is so much more humane than the rest goes. You know, some people say, well, I bought a $35,000 vaporizing laser, so now I have 35,000 reasons to declaw your cat. And this is what they're hearing from the doctors. They're hearing that it's okay, it's benign. I mean, I can't tell you the number of times that someone has written me an email and said, I wish I had known about the Paw Project before I took my cat in to be declawed, because even though I thought it was wrong to declaw, my vet convinced me it was right.
Interesting. Okay. Well, this is, to be honest, I am learning a lot as well. I am in a practice that we actively do not do this. If somebody wants this done, we try to talk them out of it, and then basically we refuse to do the procedure. We won't. Our clinic has a policy, and I personally did not realize this was still as prevalent in this country as what you're saying. So then based on that, then the excuses. So, veterinarians, hey, we get into this profession because, we love animals. So why, in your opinion, what are the excuses then or the reasons that veterinarians will actively promote this surgery to their clients?
Well, I think that most veterinarians are promoting it because they make money doing it, but also they rationalize that by saying, well, it's better that I declaw this little 2-month-old kitten and then we don't have to worry about it clawing the couch. And so I'll do it now. I'll do this little tiny kitten who hasn't had a chance to learn what's appropriate to claw. I'll just do it now. And then they also think, there are many veterinarians who think that they're saving the cat's life by declawing it, because they think that, if this cat could potentially scratch somebody, then it's going to wind up, being dumped out of the house. So why don't I preempt that by declawing it? But what they're not saying, and by the way, we use the word declawing like it's accurate. It's not. We should call it deknuckling, right? And then people would understand. But I think that's the other thing that veterinarians have done. They've called it declawing to sort of make it to gloss over the severity of the surgery. This is amputating your cat's toes. Why? No benefit to the cat whatsoever. No benefit to the human. No benefit to anybody except for the veterinarian who made the money doing it, because it doesn't even protect the couch, because declawed cats don't use a litter box, and very often they'll choose the couch.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So along those same lines, I mean, this is probably sounding a little paradoxical to probably the people who are listening to this, insofar as, well, if this is such an issue, or this surgery is so problematic, why doesn't the veterinary community, we are governed, or self-governed, I should say, by what are called veterinary medical associations, which are groups of veterinarians at the local, county, and state and national levels that will get together and pass or instruct, try to affect legislation. They'll also pass their own, deal with their own ethics and guidelines and those types of things. And we are sort of a self-governed, the Veterinary Medical Associations, or VMAs, are self-governing. So based on that, obviously it would raise the question that why don't, the average person then would sit there and look at me in the room and say, why isn't there a law, or why don't these VMAs outlaw the procedure? And what I'll present that question to you. Why would you say then that when someone asks you, like, why don't you guys just outlaw this?
Well, that is the question, and the reason I think is because too many veterinarians are making too much money doing it. Now, there are estimates that this is $1 billion. That's with a B, $1 billion a year business in the United States for veterinarians. Now, the other thing is that remember that the VMAs are membership in them is voluntary, and in fact, I have yet to find a membership in a state that is more than like 45% of the veterinarians in that state. So again, they're not everyone's a member.
Okay.
And the other thing I have to say is that a few years ago, AAHA, the American Animal Hospital Association, who touts that they know the standard of excellence, they came out with a very strong statement against declawing cats, but they are a membership organization, and it costs a certain amount of money every year to be a member of AAHA. And when they came out with against declawing cats, they lost a lot of their membership. And so then they quickly backpedaled and put on their website a toolkit on how to deal with the internet when people are bashing you for declawing cats, and how to talk to clients, and how to all this stuff, instead of saying, no, we're going to stand up for the cats, and declawing is wrong, and if we lose membership, that's because those members are archaic and they're not following the best practices anymore. But no, that's not what happened. Now, the other thing I think you should know as far as veterinarians self-governing is they don't, but what's nice is that giant veterinary corporations like VCA and Banfield, they no longer allow declawing of cats in their practices because they recognize that it is below the standard of care. And so when VCA or Banfield is more humane than the mom and pop veterinarians, you got to wonder what's going on here.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so so going back, as we talked about, like, I mean, as I mentioned before, your experience was based on following up behind these situations where you were dealing with these animals already after this procedure was done. And I saw a mention of a procedure called the paw salvage surgery. I was wondering if you could give us a little more information on that.
Yes. So because declawed cats will very often lose their homes, there's a plethora of them in shelters. And now these cats are there. They're having problems with using the litter box. They're aggressive. They're biting. They're highly timid. There's some indication that they're in chronic pain. So what we decided to do is sort of salvage surgery where we address the infections, because very often there'll be infections. When you declaw a cat, you can, if you use the Rescos, which is the nail, what the dog guillotine nail clipper, then you can leave enough bone that the claw will regenerate under the skin, and that certainly is infected and causes a lot of pain. Even if you use a scalpel and you dissect out that third phalanx, then what happens is the extensor tendon, which is on the top part of the toe, which would make the paw open, is cut. And so the paw no longer has that extensor tendon, but the superficial flexor tendon, the one on the bottom, which makes the paw close, remains intact because it attaches to the second phalanx. And so the cats get what's called a hammer toe from this procedure. Uh-oh. And it doesn't matter how you declaw them, whether you use a laser, a scalpel, or a guillotine. These are the problems that we see across the board with declawing.
So you're saying that the hammer toe is essentially the 2 digits that are left, or whatever's left, is then in a permanent state of contraction.
Yes.
And then, so for the people who aren't quite understanding what we're saying, that means if you were to say your hand, take off the last digit, your hand would, the rest of your bones would automatically be drawn into a fist. And then, assuming you are a quadruped, you would then have to walk on that contracted fist rather than walking on the toes as, well, I guess as Mother Nature designed you.
Yes.
And
And
God,
so
that would
what
be
happens?
extremely painful.
Yeah, it is extremely painful. And what happens is that, the toe beans that everyone loves, those perfectly supple, lovely oval toe beans, they begin because the anatomy has changed, so they're not being pulled to their normal position. They they begin to atrophy, and they dry up, and they become round, little, tiny, like dried, maybe the size of a lentil, and the cat no longer walks on them. So the the cat is walking bone to skin to
Oof.
floor, and so that they don't have that protection. So you can imagine that hurts extra amount, because it's like when you fall too hard on your heels or whatever, and it hurts crazy if there's no cushioning. And that's what the cat's dealing with if they do a complete amputation. If they don't do a complete amputation, the cat's dealing with these little bone fragments, which is like walking on a pebble in your shoe, or some glass, broken glass in your shoe. And that's what they're dealing with. So there is no good outcome from declawing. And whenever anyone says to me, "Oh, my cats are fine after they were declawed," I had a 14-year-old boy tell me this, and I said, "Well, what happens when you touch the paws?" He goes, "I can't touch the cat's paws; they'll bite me." And I'm like,
Uh,
"Well, that's because they're not fine. They're not fine." And then it kind of dawned on him what I was talking about. But your cat is not fine if it was declawed. It might be able to deal with it better than other cats. You might have done it at a very young age, so that it's like children who grow up without a limb know how to deal with it, because they've never really experienced anything else. But they're not fine. They've had an amputation. The studies show that cats who have been declawed are more likely to have back pain. They're more likely to bite. They're less likely to use the litter box, and they're more likely to hypergroom, overgroom, as a sort of a stereotypic behavior, like curbing, where they, I mean, sorry, like cribbing, where they're doing something to sort of give themselves a
Relief.
relief.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, almost like an OCD type thing.
Yeah,
So yeah, well,
exactly.
let's you've spoken briefly about then, like, this is what happens to the foot, when you do this, and then this is what can happen. And you just mentioned the back problems that can come with that. So if you could expand on then the sort of the, I guess what I tell my clients, the ripple effect. Okay, so yeah, we know the problems that occur in the feet because of this. Then could you just talk briefly about the long-term complications, as like, because what causes back problems? Let's put it that way.
Well, so when you declaw a cat, you change the way it walks. Cats are normally designed to walk in high heels, and up on their toes, digigrade they call it. And when you declaw them, they have to fall backwards a little bit onto their carpi, or onto their wrists, or onto their ankles, to avoid the weight on those toes. So they fall back, and that changes how they walk. And then they begin to get arthritis in their elbows, their wrists, their shoulders, and it hurts the way that they change the way they walk, and they have back pain. And very often people will tell me that their cats are declawed, and they can't pet them on the back. They can only pet them on the head.
Hmm.
And this is because of the back pain. And I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but that is a truth, that people will talk about their cats being grumpy if you pet them on the back.
Interesting. Interesting. Okay. So as of right now, actually, we're going to take a moment right now just to take a break and hear from our sponsors. So if you guys just sit tight, we'll be back in just a second. All right, welcome back. This is Dr. Jeff Pelton. We're in here with Dr. Jennifer Conrad, speaking again about the declawing of the cats. So we've gone through some of the medical aspects of this. I do want to again kind of circle back around to sort of the legislative aspects about this. And so in that, based on Dr. Conrad's history, I would like to ask, so you are currently the founder and director of the Paw Project. Could you give us some background as to what the Paw Project is, how you got it going, and what the goals are?
The Paw Project is a nonprofit. It's entirely dedicated to ending declawing of cats. And I started it because after finishing Davis, I was very interested in wildlife, and I was taking care of big cats. And these were big cats that used in the movies or big cats used in entertainment. And most of them were declawed. And I was seeing these horrible, horrible outcomes where cats couldn't walk. And I really mean they couldn't walk.
Now, when you say these cats, are you talking about like in the entertainment industry? Are you talking about a domestic house cat? Or are you talking about lions and tigers and some of these big cats?
I'm talking about big cats.
Big
like
cats,
cougars,
okay.
lions, tigers, jaguars, leopards, caracals, those big cats. So they would get declawed, mostly by the method of a jiggly wire,
Yes, okay, right.
where they saw the bone, and they would use no pain management. And these big cats, including Siegfried and Roy's big cats, remember them, the
Yep.
magicians in Las Vegas? They were all declawed, and they would very often be absolutely destroyed by it. And as a young veterinarian, I thought, well, I'm a veterinarian. I got to fix this problem. So I asked a veterinary pathologist, a zoo pathologist, for help. And he put out a poll on the internet for all of his clients, which was pretty much anybody who had exotic cats. Exotic or big cats. And they would say, well, the only way that I ever declaw is by a full amputation of the last toe bone, because otherwise you get nail regrowth, or you get this problem, the pebble in the shoe problem. And then the other half of them responded, well, the only way to declaw is by leaving part of the bone, because otherwise you get the hammer toe that we were describing. So no matter how you declawed, there were problems. And I decided, well, I'm going to ask some human hand surgeons how they would repair, or what they would do if a person came in missing this last phalanx, missing that last part of your finger. And they told me how they would do the surgery. And then I decided, well, these cats have nothing to lose. Literally, and I don't use that word often, but walking on their elbows to avoid putting anything on their paw, any weight on their paws. I started taking them to surgery, and it was miraculous to watch them be able to walk again. And what we did in the surgery was we would go into each toe, and it would take about 20 to 45 minutes per toe. So
Oof.
This is a long surgery, and we'd go in and we would fix, take out the infection, take out that little tiny piece of bone. It's not a little tiny in a big cat. It's actually probably the size of a regular marble, and it's sharp. Take that out, and what we would do is we would attach the pad back under the distal end of the second phalanx. So attach the pad where it belonged to cushion the hammer toe.
Okay.
That was going, and pull the flexor tendon over and attach it to the dorsal aspect of the second phalanx, so that the cat had something to pull against. That it was effectively giving them the use of their paw again, although the digits were now shorter.
Right.
But by cleaning out the infection and cleaning out that bone and putting the pad where it belongs, which is not easy, let me tell you, then the cat could walk again with some semblance of comfort. And it was remarkable. And this is what started the Paw Project. I started thinking, I have to do this to every declaw cat I ever met. And I have now. I mean, I'm talking about big cats. I have done this on over 80 big cats. And and then what happened was I had a mutual friend with the deputy to the mayor of West Hollywood. And he had just found a declawed domestic cat who was dumped, and he noticed that this cat would back into the litter box. Like it wouldn't walk in the front, with its paws, its front paws, which is where it was declawed. It would just back in, and that's how that cat dealt with the pain of the litter box.
So you're saying the cat would literally walk backwards to avoid putting weight on its front
Yes.
feet?
Wow. Putting the litter on its front feet. Yes. And so he came to see what I was doing with the declawing of the big cats. And, with salvaging the paws of the big cats. He was interested. And when he showed up that day, he was greeted by me being very frustrated because I just done the repairs on a lion, and she would not, an African lion, she would not let me take off her bandages. When she woke up from the surgery, I assumed that she felt so much better that she wouldn't let me remove the green vet wrap bandages that I had placed on her paws. And now it was the third day, and it was getting to the point where I had to remove them. And I was very frustrated because I was going to have to knock her back down to remove the bandages. She's like, "You're not taking my shoes. My feet feel so much better. You're not taking them." And so I was very frustrated. And I said to him, sort of off the cuff, not knowing that it was going to change my life forever, "Why don't we make it illegal to declaw cats in West Hollywood?" And this is how it started. And he was amenable to that. And we did everything we needed to write the legislation to make it airtight. And we wanted to protect all cats, meaning, domestic cats, big cats. And so we wrote it that way. And I didn't realize at that time how bad the problem was with declawing of domestic cats because I was working with big cats. I didn't realize how high the numbers were until in West Hollywood we got such opposition. See, I thought I was doing veterinarians a favor when I started this. I thought nobody wants to declaw a cat. It's such a brutal, awful thing to do to an animal. If we protect the veterinarians by making it a law, then no client can say, "You have to declaw my cat," because the veterinarian can say, "I can't. It's illegal." So I thought that's what it was going to be. Little did I know that I would be the enemy of all these veterinarians. I went to a conference that was for cat. It was specifically for cats, cat medicine. And I sat down at the lunch and learn. You know how you get your lunch and you sit down at a table? I sat down, and every veterinarian at the table, everyone got up and left. And because I was such public enemy number one for banning declawing in West Hollywood. And I was so shocked. And at that time, I was so shocked. I decided to have the resolve that I don't care if veterinarians are mad at me. I just care that cats are not mad at me. And to this day, I do not think there's a single cat on the planet who would be mad at me for protecting their paws.
So just for a frame of reference, when did this interaction with West Hollywood, the city, when did this happen?
In West Hollywood, we banned declawing in April of 2003, so 20 years ago.
20 years ago. Okay. All right. Now, in your memory, that was the first, right, ever in this country? The first city
That's the first
ever?
in all of North America.
North America.
The first in all of North America.
Okay.
Now, since then, we've been able to do a lot more, but it's very slow considering how horrendous and egregious the act of declawing is. It's very slow. And the reason it's slow is because legislators don't understand why the Veterinary Medical Association would promote a surgery if it was bad. And this is what's so hard, is no matter what evidence I give them, the Veterinary Medical Associations come back with these two excuses. The most prevalent is I'd rather have a cat declawed than go to the shelter. Well, we proved that there are tons of declawed cats in the shelters. That doesn't work.
Okay.
Even the AAFP, they don't recognize that declawing protects cats from going to the shelter, because it doesn't. If someone's intolerant of a cat scratching a couch, then they're really intolerant of a cat peeing on a couch or biting. And that's what happens when you declaw a cat. The other thing that the AVMA or other VMAs will use is, what about the old lady who's on Coumadin and has paper thin skin and she can't get scratched? Well, guess what? She can't get bitten more. That's the problem, is being bitten. So the CDC, the NIH, the U.S. Public Health Service, the Canadian Medical Association, all these major human health organizations say declawing the cat is not advised to protect humans. It doesn't work. So don't do it.
Okay.
And yet the veterinary medical associations use that because they have no other excuse. They want to sound like they're declawing a cat so that the grandma can keep the cat. But that's not right. They're declawing the cat for money, because it's not for the grandma. Because last time I checked, there were grandmas on Coumadin in England and in Switzerland and all over the world, and they have cats with claws, and they're not dying from it.
Okay. So based on that, then, what? Well, you just kind of alluded to what the sort of the veterinary medical associations will sort of use as a duck and cover kind of argument for keeping the procedure from becoming outlawed or recommended against. Are there any other tactics that they use to keep this off the books?
Well, I think that what they use is they use your PAC money, your political action committee money that the veterinarians donate to them to protect. The VMAs have one goal, and that is to protect the bottom line of veterinarians. They are interested in protecting veterinarians and their money that they make. That is what they're designed for. So people will donate to them thinking that, oh, I got to protect my business, so I'll give them money so that they can influence legislators. Now, what happened in California, which is hilarious, is that in 2003, we banned declawing in West Hollywood. And then in 2005, the California Veterinary Medical Association sued the city of West Hollywood over the declaw ban. The appellate court ruled in favor of West Hollywood, saying that a city has the right to protect its citizens and its animal citizens as well. So then the California Veterinary Medical Association decided to make a law that you can't ban declawing in the state of California. You can't ban a medical procedure. But they made an error, which we exploited immensely. They said that the new law that you can't ban a ban is going to take effect in January of 2010. Now, this is in September or so of 2009 that the law goes into effect. So we scrambled all over California asking cities to ban declawing before their right to ban declawing was taken away from them. And that is how we banned declawing in 7 cities in 6 weeks in California, is because the California VMA made a stupid law and we took advantage of it. So now, instead of it just being illegal in West Hollywood, it's illegal in Los Angeles, which is a big city. It's illegal in Santa Monica, Culver City, Beverly Hills, where they have very nice furniture and they can't declaw their cats. It's illegal in San Francisco, in Berkeley, in Burbank. So it's now, it's now illegal in 8 cities in California because of the California Veterinary Medical Association's blunder of trying to ban bans. But now what's happening is other states are trying to ban bans, like the state of Missouri, where it's illegal in St. Louis and St. Louis County, which are not the same areas at all. that's where it's illegal to declaw cats. But there's a legislator whose mother owns a veterinary clinic that declaws 4 or so cats a week using Rescos and using no pain management. And he's trying to make, his name is Justin Brown, and he's a senator in Missouri, and he is trying to make a ban on bans, trying to overturn the bans that exist in Missouri. He failed this year, but I'm pretty sure he's going to pass it next year. And this is the sort of thing that we deal with. The same thing's happening in Texas. We banned declawing in Austin, Texas. And Texas is now making a preemption bill where you can't ban declawing.
Okay. All right. So, wow. Yeah, that's pretty amazing. So, kind of circling back to just you personally now, and I guess the Paw Project. Could talk a little bit more about the Paw Project, because I also saw online that you have representation in every state, don't you?
We have we have veterinarians who don't declaw. We have a list of veterinarians on pawproject.org where we direct people. If you're looking for a humane veterinarian who's voluntarily given up declawing, then you can find one in your state. And what we found from veterinarians who have voluntarily given up declawing is that they actually make more money than when they were declawing, because people are looking for a humane veterinarian. So there's no reason for people to continue declawing. It's bad for the karma of your veterinary clinic. I can tell you that vet techs quit practices that declaw because they're the ones who have to watch these cats writhing in pain as they wake up from anesthesia. They're the ones who have to deal with the blood all over the cages. They're the ones who have to see this. The veterinarian who declawed doesn't know the pain that these cats are going through, apparently, because they keep doing it. But veterinarians who voluntarily give up declawing get more income. They have higher client retention and higher patient retention, because a cat who's been declawed is very likely to lose its home because of the behavior problems. So that vet has lost that patient instead of having that cat for the rest of its life.
There you go. So, out of curiosity, are you what's sort of a Paw Project right now? Are you guys working on anything like in the forefront? Is it more of a legislative push? Is it an education push? What is it that Paw Project is sort of focused on?
Well, we've tried education, but legislation is education. When people understand that this is so horrible a procedure that it has to be made illegal, then they take it more seriously. Now, it is illegal in the state of New York, and it is illegal in the state of Maryland. We've been able to do those 2 states. We currently have legislation in multiple states, but the VMAs fight us. And you wouldn't believe the stupid arguments that they use. They say it's so rare, and we say, well, how is 20 to 24% rare? And then they say, well, nobody wants to do it. We always talk everyone out of it. I'm like, how is 20 to 24% of American cats being declawed? How is that you guys talking everyone out of it? Because that's not. And these VMAs are just trying to protect this $1 billion a year business. What we're trying to do is say, hey, if you're an ethical veterinarian and you've given up declawing, let's protect you from losing your clients to the guy down the street who declaws for cheap, and clients will be convinced that they need to declaw their cat by that guy. So we're trying to level the playing field by making it illegal all across the board. Mm-hmm. And if the AVMA were just to say, hey, declawing is below the standard of care, then wouldn't that make it easier for us if the AVMA were to say that? But then instead they say, it should be a last resort, and only after all the humane alternatives have been exhausted. But how is that possible in a 2-month-old kitten that you've exhausted everything? It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, we don't have a whole lot of time left, but I did want to kind of touch on that. I was surprised when you said that this procedure was being done in animals that young. My understanding, kind of, or my experience with all of this is the typical presentation is an adult cat or something along those lines that has been recently adopted or has started doing abnormal behaviors that the owners are thinking this is what I want to do. I've never heard of anybody, to be honest, declawing a less than 1 year old animal.
Oh, it happens all the time. That veterinarians prefer declawing little kittens. It's easier for them by far. I mean, 76% of cats are declawed before they're 8 months old.
Wow.
76%. So it's little cats. And how have they had a chance to learn where to scratch? And it's a normal behavior. Make sure everyone understands scratching is a normal cat behavior. And we're using a surgery to stop a normal behavior. That's so wrong.
Yeah. Okay, and on that note, we are going to wrap up. So, once again, I have been talking with Dr. Jennifer Conrad, founder and director of the Paw Project. So, out of curiosity, if people hear this and they would like to know more, get involved, or whatever, how can they figure this out? How can they look? I assume Paw Project is online.
Yeah, Paw Project is www.pawproject.org. And we're here for you. And if you look up Don't Declaw the Cat, you'll probably find us too.
Sounds great. All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Conrad, for your time. And this has been another episode of The Captain's Table. Take care, everybody.